Hey guys, I am so excited for this episode. We're doing the gut microbiome, and let me tell you, there is so much information to be had in this episode. Your gut microbiome is all about the bacteria in your gut and how it keeps you healthy, and the doctor I'm getting ready to talk to has tips on how to keep the microbiome healthy, as well as ways to change it if you need to. There's a lot to cover, so let's just get into it. I'm Sarah King, and I have a lot of questions. What exactly happens when you orgasm physically? What can we learn from our poop? You gotta get that protein. Get that protein. Ladies, you need the protein. Do you think it's been exaggerated? If I have sex the night before my pap smear, can it mess up my results? In this show, I get to ask all these questions to WakeMed doctors who happen to know everything about everything. Sarah Has Questions is a production of Capital Broadcasting Company and Mix 101.5. It's presented by WakeMed. We are talking gut health today with Dr. Jiselle Bock. She is a general surgeon with WakeMed. Welcome. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to talk gut biome. But just guts in general.
Sure.
Because I have IBS. I've had it my whole life. And as someone with IBS, you're constantly kind of at your guts.
Mercy, right?
Yeah, mercy. Yeah. That's a good word. Exactly. Because you never know. More stress, it gets worse. So I don't know. And we were talking off air a second ago, and you said that IBS really does center around the gut microbiome.
Yeah. And it's been really kind of a personal journey for me, too, to learn about the gut microbiome and how it's so critically important in my patients' lives. I mean, I do counseling about the gut microbiome before surgery, and I'm talking to patients about it almost like prehab, because I think the gut microbiome it's constantly working. It's affecting probably every biological system inside of us. And we're just starting to figure out
Oh my God.
the interconnections.
I just got tingles. I'm so excited about this episode because it's so fascinating to me.
It really is.
All right. So my first question is pretty simple, though I don't think the answer will be. What exactly is a gut microbiome?
That's a great question. So, the gut microbiome is all of these biological components that make up we're hosts, right? Like we are hosts to trillions of bacteria. And not just that, there's funguses, there's viruses, there's...
Germaphobes are freaking out right now.
I know. And that's what's so interesting. And polio, that's what happened with polio is germaphobes. So people who are actually exposed to the virus in, the contaminated water, they had low levels in their system. So it was actually people who were isolated away from the virus that ended up getting paralyzed. So it's like... I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this podcast, and I was thinking about your show and thinking about it last night. And when you think about it, we have a very intimate relationship with bacteria. We from the time our great ancestor single cell was floating around in the sea, mitochondria are the powerhouses of our cells. Mitochondria, if you go back to biology, they are a different organelle that's inside the cell, and we subsumed mitochondria into our cells in the very beginning. And so we have this relationship that literally on a cellular level is integrated with bacteria.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that makes the energy in our body. So we're dependent on that mitochondria to power us. And so
we're made out of bacteria.
We are made out of bacteria. Yeah.
Wow.
And not just, and so that's like, not just on the inside, right? Because I always talk about our bodies like, we're a gut tube inside of a flesh tube. That's like how I like to.
So romantic.
I know. I have a few other ones. I have a good trauma one about how we're squishy meat bags just, flying through space. But, really, this is what we are. And so we have this barrier to the world, and that barrier is covered with bacteria inside and out. And those bacteria are working for us. They're working for us, but when there's an imbalance or when there is a chronic inflammatory state that gets created, which I think really, if you live in America right now, you live in a chronic inflammatory state. The amount of exposure that we have to, artificial stuff, chemicals, food additives, all of that stuff. And the types of food too, these highly processed.
Yeah.
It's really hard because, in America with our economy and, the focus on food after, World War II and all of that, getting more calories, getting more meat, getting more, dairy, but how the food is industrialized. I went to France last year, and when I was there, I realized I was like, oh, I remember now. this is how you eat.
Yeah.
And the food, in other countries, you didn't have the industrialization and the way that the cities were created like we have in America. We're a massive country, right?
Yeah.
So we need massive amounts of food to feed people. And so the thing is that results in processing and preservation that kills bacteria that's in the food. So that's one of the things is that the food that we eat, it's not rich in the probiotics. So the probiotics are the bacteria. The prebiotics is the stuff the bacteria like to eat. And so with a diet that's deficient in both of those things, we're not feeding our microbiome.
Which again, like if you gave it to me in a sentence, what exactly is a gut microbiome?
It's all of the bacteria, viruses, fungi that colonize our system.
And so how important is it to have a balanced gut biome?
I think it's really critically important. I mean, I think an imbalance or dysbiosis is what it's called. And, we're really just figuring this stuff out, right? What something is, we know that there are certain bacteria like E. coli or Shigella, or, there are these Campylobacter. There are bacteria that are definitely pathologic, that when you get them, you get watery, bloody diarrhea or typhoid or whatever, right? We have pathogens that are bad guys. But I think what we're coming to realize and what we've found out is that there's a lot going on in there with just the balance of our friendlies and other things that maybe are okay in a small amount, but when you eat a lot of sugar or you eat a lot of French fries or something, right? They go out of balance, and that chronic inflammatory state irritates that gut lining. And so when you have this chronic inflammatory state, that is what protects you, your inside from the outside, right? You start getting a lot more interaction.
And you get sick more frequently.
Well, I think what happens is you get immunomodulation. What we're talking about is alterations in the chemical signals that are happening in our body and how the gut lining or the barrier is impacting changes in that signaling. And not just that, I mean, the types of bacteria that are in our gut and how they interact together. It can result in hormonal changes, metabolic changes.
Yeah.
All of this stuff is related. Psychological. I mean, it literally is. Your mind and your body is dependent on the gut. With a background in trauma, I was looking at, this was like last year, I gave a talk on trauma and gut microbiome because it's really interesting. I saw a few things. So one of the things is that when you sustain a traumatic event, so trauma patients, car wreck, stab, gunshot, whatever, you get brought into the ER. When they tested rectal swabs and looked at the bacteria, there was a shift in the microbiome within 30 minutes.
Wow.
So dysbiosis started happening, a negative shift in the bacteria.
Meaning they're dying off or they're just getting imbalanced?
Great question. Yeah. So what happens when you have dysbiosis, it's less variety.
Yes. Okay.
And less of the friendlies.
Gotcha.
And so the variety is really important too, because even if you're just eating apples as your only fruit every day, right? There's certain bacteria are going to like that. But there's a lot of other friendly guys that maybe want to eat a turnip or want to eat celery or want to eat quinoa and kale. And so that variety of the food is so critically important. You are what you eat.
Yes, literally.
And we use what we eat. Those bacteria are starting to make the precursors for our hormones, for our neurotransmitters, for our all of it, our immune system.
Okay.
And so what's going on in there has a huge impact, I think, long term in our health.
So what are signs for people when they know their gut is out of balance, aside from diarrhea and constipation?
Right. Diabetes.
Oh. Okay.
Obesity. Heart disease.
Okay. So all of those things can
chronic. Yep.
Okay.
I think what we're finding is that we're probably going to be able to associate most, if not all, chronic diseases in some way to the gut microbiome.
Oh, that's so fascinating. I want to ask, like you said, that when it's out of balance, it becomes irritated. How is it irritating it?
Yeah, great question. So our gut is covered with mucus, and we have cells that secrete protective, lining and things like that. It's nice, tight junctions is what they call it. So in between the cells are really close together and sort of impermeable, right? They're not going to let bacteria in. They're not going to let signals, pieces of bacteria, stuff, right? Yeah. When things get inflamed, you get swelling. Just like if you get stung by a bee,
right? You
get a wheal,
right?
And it's inflamed, and that's fluid that's accumulating.
Oh.
So when that fluid accumulates, you get kind of a spreading out of the lining and the cells.
What causes the fluid to happen?
The inflammatory response. your body's immune response and cell signals to
So it's trying to
something going
correct
on.
the imbalance, and that's
I think our body is always trying to correct the imbalance. And I think that's, the basis for, chronic disease. I think a lot of that has to do with the inflammatory response stuff. I mean, if you look at COVID, right, it wasn't COVID itself that was the big problem. It was the inflammatory response in the lungs that resulted.
Right.
So, how our body is responding to these triggers and these exposures really will outline, that's the path of how you're going to present the rest of your life, what kind of illnesses you're going to have, what symptoms you're going to have.
That's insane.
Isn't it?
It's insane.
But I mean, going back to the gut microbiome, what symptoms? Depression, anxiety, PTSD.
Okay.
People who have dysbiosis and experience a traumatic event psychologically, if you have dysbiosis, you're more likely to get PTSD long term.
So on that token, if you on that same token, if you were to correct the dysbiosis, then those other things ought to go away.
So that's again really great question. You have great questions, Sarah.
Thanks.
I see why they give you a show. It's really good.
Thank you.
I love it. I'm like, do you want to be my patient?
I would
love to
love
sit down.
that.
Let me know if you need something taken out.
Okay. I'll start looking.
Yeah, I don't want that for you, but I'm happy to help if you need me.
So it's true then that if you correct the dysbiosis, is that what it's called?
Dysbiosis,
then it should clear up things like depression, or at least change it a little.
It will definitely change things. I mean, I don't think that the data is there as far as, if we do X, then Y happens.
Right.
But
hopefully they're studying that
in
men and women.
Thank you. That's a great point that you bring up.
Yeah.
Women. Yeah. I mean, it's really funny taking care, being a physician, taking care of women. It's amazing because men and women's bodies are different.
Very. I spoke to a person who works in like a lab and does a lot of testing. And he said the reason is because men's bodies are so simple. And and so you can have.
That's interesting.
Well, he said you can have, you can put in one factor and then there's nothing else to say.
From a hormonal standpoint or something,
or anything there's not that many other factors that could give you change the result.
Sure.
Whereas when you put in a woman's body, you have hormones and things like that.
They
and
have
every
hormones
woman
too.
Yeah, I know. And I looked at him. I was like, listen, dude, just because it's complex doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Totally. For me, thinking about the gut and for individuals, what can people do to take care of themselves? I think the biggest thing is recognizing that you are a host.
Yeah.
You are a host to trillions of bacteria that are driving your biological processes. They are driving your cravings, food cravings.
Yeah.
They're driving your stress, your anxiety. And so how do we get control of them?
Yes, good question.
How do we get control of them? Well, it's not a take a one pill easy process. It's lifestyle change. And what's crazy is that it goes back to the things that we talk about, what you eat and how you move. As a doctor taking care of people for years, those are the two major factors that result in.
I've heard it from every doctor here.
How well you're going to do, how well you're going to cope with the surgery.
Right.
How well. And so I look at my gut as my own personal garden.
Oh, I like that.
And if you don't give it attention, it's just going to grow weeds and you're going to have copperhead pits and it's going to be a mess.
So let's focus on that real quick. How can I make my garden thrive?
Yeah.
What are some quick tips?
Perfect.
Like 3 or 4 tips that you can give our listeners.
Great. So you have to care for it. It's a daily process.
Okay.
It's, you have to get it good fertilizer. That's your prebiotics, and that's plant fiber. So you need a variety of different plants for your gut. That's what bacteria want to eat.
Okay.
Broccoli, kale, quinoa, and I'm not talking about whole wheat bread, right?
Okay.
Whole wheat bread, whole wheat pasta. That's really a highly processed food product. I'm talking about the raw stuff, bulgur. Quinoa.
Bulgur sounds delicious.
It actually is very good.
I've had it. I'm totally kidding.
You can
It's
have
just a funny
porridge.
word. Yeah.
I know. But I mean,
Oatmeal,
quinoa, all that stuff. Yeah. And a variety of that stuff. Flax seeds, mixing that stuff in.
Okay, so that's your fertilizer. What
That's
next?
your fertilizer. Then you need your seeds.
Okay, and what
You
would
got
that
to
be?
plant your garden. That's your probiotics.
So you believe in probiotics.
So it's not really so much a belief. It's just a food. I mean, for me,
in food.
I recommend to my patients not to take a pill.
That's my question.
Yeah, because and you can do what you want. Everybody's going to do what's right for them. I find that most people don't really like taking medicine, and so they'll probably take their probiotic the same way they take their blood pressure medicine when they remember, or their antidepressant. Right?
Yeah,
And so changing the way you eat and incorporating 1 to 2 servings of fermented food on a daily
So those
basis.
are the seeds?
Fermented food is the seeds. Live, active cultures. And
so
that's
yogurt and kimchi.
Kefir, kombucha. Those are my favorites. In my house, my
what
kids
about alcohol? That's fermented.
It's a great question. Gosh. So it is, but unfortunately, alcohol itself is toxic to the gut microbiome.
Okay.
And so there, looking at the studies for all comers, I mean, there are some that say, red wine in moderation because of the polyphenols, they think it's okay, but I'm not going to support that because I just feel like the vast majority of the data shows that alcohol is toxic. We have a very alcohol-loving society, and
Not
it is
me.
No,
No
I'm just
way.
saying.
My husband doesn't sell wine for a living.
No, I trained in Louisiana for 15 years. Trust me. It's okay. Like people drink daiquiris for breakfast.
I know.
On holidays, of which there are plenty.
Yes,
right?
it's true.
And so, I think being aware, now it's like one of those things, like if I'm going to have a glass of wine, I'm considering the effect on my gut microbiome and I'm making a decision. Am I going to drink this wine or am I going to pass?
Okay, so we've got fertilizer, we've got seeds.
That's it.
And then
and then
that's
just
it.
live your life. YOLO.
And move.
And that's another. So that was I saw another study recently that said because they actually have seen now that skeletal muscle from exercise sends signals to the gut microbiome.
Well, so is the gut microbiome the same as the gut brain?
Yeah, I think that's, kind of colloquial. I think they are 100% connected.
Got it.
In a way that is inextricable.
Got it.
You cannot separate these two things.
So stress affects the quote unquote brain, but that is also the microbiome, and it will get your system out of balance.
100%.
Gotcha.
Yeah, sleep. Meditation, right? I don't know if you've tried meditation.
I do meditate.
But I love that I ask people about meditation and they go, oh, I can't meditate. I'm like, oh, so you're human.
Yeah.
So
you got
that
a monkey
is
brain.
That
That's
is what we are, right? Those things alter your neurotransmitters, your stress. You got to get good sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep is so critical. And all of that
I do a morning show. Don't tell me that.
Yeah. It's okay. I operate at 7:30.
Okay, so we're in the same boat. All right, so let me ask you some quick fire questions here. What are your thoughts on the companies that are analyzing microbiomes out there? Because there's a bunch of them. Do you think that they're good? And when we get the information, what are we supposed to do with it?
Right. Good question. There's always been a combination of industry and research. And I think, the key is randomized controlled trials.
Yeah.
You have to have good scientific data. Industry is, and companies are not, evil, right?
No, they're trying.
Yeah. And they fund a lot of the research. I think what we have to do and what we're taught, in our training is to analyze that data really carefully.
So when I send it off, so you think, so should I not use because there's a Netflix special on right now called Hack Your Gut.
Love it. Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah,
it's good.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they have the company in which they all send their stuff out to.
Sure.
Is this something I should do or not?
I don't think I don't think you have to. I think it's something if you personally are curious about your bacteria, it may give you insights into what your microbiome looks like. But like I said, I think most people in America, if you live in America, if you're struggling with, any
IBS, constipation,
like you can and
you can do seeds and fertilizer,
which is eating.
Yeah,
right.
Just eat better.
It's
and work out.
And work out.
Okay.
It's like so.
And you're not for probiotics.
Well, I'm for food based.
Yes, not the pills.
Yeah,
not the pills.
We don't know what's really in it. We don't know how active it is. We don't know how much of it's actually going to get through your stomach acid. Just eat the food. You have to overload the system.
Yeah.
You have to. So it's like one probiotic or one serving of fermented food once a month. Probably most of it's going to get killed off by your stomach acid. The key is continually flooding your system with those seeds, nurturing that, and letting that grow.
Okay. All right. I think that's good. I think I learned a ton. You are fascinating to talk to.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
I wish I had like 3 hours.
Stop. I'll come anytime. I love to, talk about this interesting stuff.
We will have you back. You can find Dr. Jiselle Bock at wakemed.org. Send us your show ideas or questions at wralfm.com/Sarah Has Questions. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and thank you for sharing the show with your friends.